question for me when I heard Lawan's statement was, I was taken aback. The first question I asked was if Lawan was now the spokesperson of the president, and if he was just expressing an opinion on a matter or an informal conversation he had with the president. And then also, if the president was not aware of the proposed subsidy removal, and then on whose behalf were those people that were speaking, now speaking? Mind you, the president is the minister for petroleum. Yeah. He's retained that office since inception. So if the president is not aware, the minister for state for petroleum had come out expressly to say, well, we're going to allow market forces to determine price. We are also going to scrap PEF, that's the Petroleum Equalization Fund, that if market forces are determining price, there was no need to pay equalization. Okay. That's the bridging cost. So, and now all of a sudden, typical of our president, somebody is saying he's not aware. And that person, the question he will ask is, does he have the constitutional power to speak for and on behalf of the presidency, for which he's not a member? I would say categorically, it doesn't have such powers. And that is how they fly kite, and then they turn around tomorrow to tell you that, well, I didn't make such statement, and the man who made the statement does not have authority to so do. He's a Senate president. If he's expressing the mind of the Senate that it was premature to remove subsidy, that would have been understandable. Or if he was expressing the mindset of a committee in the Senate, maybe the downstream committee, that would have been different. But to say that the president is not aware, as though he's now speaking for the president, for me, I don't think he has the power to so do. And that is why also I believe that truly, like Labour has said, let the president come out and be categorical. Issues like this, it is good for us to interact with the mind of the president. It is good for us to know the direction that they want to go. But I think, like we had said before the interview, I think what they just did was to test the water and see how Nigerians will react. And mind you, initially when they first came on board, a lot of people accepted everything they threw at us. But now with the unbearable hardship coupled with the policy somersault, a lot of people are not too comfortable with most of this their trial and error style of government. But that said, really, the question is, if we say that we earmark 440,000 barrels per day for local consumption, it is easy. If your refineries cannot refine 440,000 barrels per day, what do? You price the 440,000 barrels at the wellhead price. Once you take the cost of production of crude is usually constant, it's static, and it doesn't go be higher than maximum $10 cost of production. But because of the Nigerian factor, some of these IOCs will tell you cost of production is $30, and all of per barrel and the rest, which is not true. Because if you read international journals on this, some even tell you that cost of production can be as low as $5. The question is, because it is not every country that is producing oil, so OPEC determines the price. And so, if you produce at $5, for example, and then the price of that product is $100 at international markets, because the moment you take it out from the wellhead and it goes into the international market, it becomes $100. So, what do you do for your local consumption? What presently we are doing is that we have JVs and sharing a partnership agreement with most of these international organizations, and then they drill oil, and then we buy back from them at that international price, as though we are not producing oil, at the price that the country that is not producing oil will buy for. So, if the one that is earmarked for local consumption, you buy it from the wellhead at maximum let's even admit $330 per barrel. What you just need to do is to employ a refinery abroad. Since yours is not refining, you ship the crude, they refine, and then you ship back everything that is refined, from the PMS to the AGO to what do you call it, aviation fuel, and then to your lubricants. You have about 16 byproducts from crude. So with that, all of this issue of what do you call it, subsidy or no subsidy won't be there. But typical of Nigeria, you know, this is the only country that is doing oil business and is running it at a loss. So typical of Nigeria, you find situations where at the end of the day you give somebody a contract to drill, and then because of the money that he's getting from it, he gives you return through kickbacks and the rest. So he drills, he goes to refine, and then he refines. Then you do JV agreement, profit sharing and the rest. And at the end of the day, you are buying at the international price. So if the price of dollar goes up, what you will pay definitely will be higher. So you're going to pay subsidy on it. But if you're buying at wellhead and then you determine how you refine the crude and all of that, it becomes easy for you to service your local consumption. And then secondly, the swap arrangement that they have always talked about, it is also, you know, a wrong thing to do. It is not beneficial to the country. How do you give somebody a product, crude, that has about 16 byproducts? You now say, bring only PMS for me. How about the other 15 byproducts? The man takes away. He said because that's the cost of his cost of refining and the rest. And so you give him the crude, and then he gives you only PMS. Every other byproduct he takes away. So at the end, you are still running at a loss. So, but if you calculate your local consumption, 440,000 barrels per day, and it's okay, look, I'm going to buy this, you know, from the wellhead at X amount. It becomes easy. So you all you just be paying will be cost of shipping to and fro. So, and then why you concentrate on rehabilitating or building your refinery so that you can refine at local refine for local consumption. It's that simple. You have refineries in Nigeria, and yet you have even what we call modular refineries. Modular refineries, or modular refineries that are producing at refining 30,000 liters. How much to build these modular refineries? You're building modular refineries. The one in Owerri, what was the cost? It was less than about $100 million to build 30,000 liters capacity. And so, if now you want to rehabilitate a moribund one with 2-point-something billion. So if you are, and that's your moribund one, if you now take that 2-point-something billion, and why I'm going this far is to give you the wastage that is going on. If you take $100 million, multiply it times 10 modular refineries that will refine 30,000 liters capacity. So once you're going to spend, well, let's say maximum 1.1 billion, for let's say $110 million, 1.1 billion, and at that 30,000 liters capacity times 10. So that's about 300,000 barrels per day. And yet, you're going to sign an agreement with a refinery in Niger that is producing 20,000 capacity. You're going to now rehabilitate your old one with 2.6 billion. You ask yourself, so it means that people in this industry are not thinking, and they just all is an avenue for people to make money, so to siphon money. So that is why this issue of when the president was in opposition, he looked at it arithmetically the way I've explained it to him now, and they said there was nothing like subsidy. But the moment he came into government, you know, he changed his approach to his narrative and said, oh yes, there's subsidy and we'll continue to pay subsidy. Why don't you look at what you are consuming locally and say, okay, from this local consumption, let us buy it at this price, not at the international price. Because to give you everyday man analysis, you are a yam farmer. Because not everybody is farming yam. Because what we are basically doing now, we are buying the product the same way, at the same price that the country that is not producing it is buying it. So it's like a yam farmer, and then you want yam flour. So because you do not have the capacity to process the yam flour for your family, you now say, okay, you know what? You sell to XYZ. And the moment you sell it to XYZ, the price is determined at that market. So now XYZ will refine that yam flour and sell back to you. And in selling back to you, he's going to factor in the international price that he bought. So, but if you say, you know what, this yam, the one that we are going to consume at home, we will buy it in the farm. There's no need taking it out of the farm. From the farm here, we'll calculate what we are going to consume at home. Please, Iya Belikis, please help us to process this thing into yam flour and give us back. So we'll pay you cost of processing and the transportation to take it to you back. So with that, consistently, you will have local consumption distinct from the price of the product, you know, outside. That's as simple as that. But when you say these things, oh, people will ask you, where have you worked before? Where have you done this thing before? Why are you coming to tell us that have been in the industry? What do you know? Because everybody sees this as opportunity to make money. And so that is why they are playing ping pong. Those, once you're outside of government, you see there's no subsidy. The moment you come into government, you see that it's a cash cow to make money. You say, no, we have to consistently pay. That is why nobody is importing apart from an NNPC. And so when they import, because even to access forests is another thing too. If for a product that you are not, that you're a local product, but you are not refining, and then you have to buy it at a forest market. At the end of the day, you are going to source for the currency that they are using to buy it, to be able to trade in that product. And so if the currency is not readily available in your country, you're just going to sit down and fold your hand and let NNPC be the one to source it. That is why NNPC consistently is running at a loss. Instead of telling you that they are running at a loss, they look for a bogus name for it. So it's quite unfortunate, very unfortunate.
It's sad. And some people have even alluded to the fact that the change of plan by the federal government could be in preparation for the Dangote refinery to come up off stream. Well, we have had a situation whereby some cartel have monopolized some products in Nigeria, and this has really caused a lot of agitations among the populace. One of it is cement, and equally sugar and some other products which are being controlled by Dangote and one or two other fellas. Now, could it be true that the federal government is waiting solely for Dangote to come, refinery to come on? Or perhaps maybe the cartel, quote unquote the cartel, are still strangling this government economic policy?
It is very obvious two things: that the government does not understand its own policies, and so because of that they create avenues to make money. Recently, governments have to spend how many million dollars to buy 20% in Dangote refinery. And then you ask yourself, like I explained to you, with that money you would have been able to build modular refineries across the country.
Political zone at least.
So why go buy 20% stake in a private refinery? And then we had seen that the way we have handed over the cement economy, like you have said, the cement economy, the sugar economy to Dangote has not dropped price.
Yes.
It has not reduced price. It has not made houses building.
In fact, from investigation, it's even more expensive in Nigeria than some other West African countries.
So now government had abdicated the responsibility, and now they are waiting for Dangote to come upstream. Why don't you just hand over the country to Dangote then? If Dangote, you have to wait for Dangote, you give Dangote money, he has access to forests, you know. So at the end of the day, even the amount you earmark to maintain your own refinery is outrageous. So what this means is that tomorrow another government can come and create their own Dangote and then just cripple this particular one. That is why you find out that some persons in government, some people come up on board in government, especially for businesses, and then after some time, with one government policy, they just cripple, because most of our businesses here rely solely on government to survive. If another government comes on board tomorrow and say, look, we want to, buy back our 20% from Dangote refinery, and that we can no longer, give Dangote crude at the whatever arrangement that they have, that he would have to buy and source, because if Dangote is going to be buying crude at the OPEC price, that means he will be buying at international price. If he's buying the crude at international price, there's no way he's going to sell to you at a cheaper price. The only differentials will be, cost of freighting and all of that would have been eliminated. So it's still going to be higher than the pump price, the nozzle price. Yes, it's just that government subsidy would have been reduced. But then the question would be, would Dangote refinery be able to refine the entire local consumption or the differentials? With Dangote, can government now compare Dangote to feed only the local market without having to export to neighboring African countries? He's a businessman, so you cannot determine the extent of how he can expand his goods and services. So these are the issues that I think that somebody somewhere is not thinking properly. We have been complaining and discussing these refineries since 1999. Obasanjo came, privatized, and then Yar'Adua came, and then government said the transactions were not transparent, and then consistently they have been doing TAM. TAM became a cash cow. It became an avenue for boys to eat. And that is the same time they are going to do again now with $2.something billion to turn around a refinery that is almost obsolete. About 3 years ago, the same NNPC admitted that most of the refineries did not refine one crude, not a drop, but the incurred costs for staffs and maintenance. So you now begin to ask yourself, so now they are all waiting, the entire country of 200-something million people are waiting for one refinery in Lagos. So you are still going to have a situation where the costs of bridging, government who takes up that because this is a mono economy, a mono product that runs the economy, where government will still insist, especially depending on where the president is from. Oh, my people up north cannot buy it higher than those in south. After all, we are blessed with this product. So all of these are the issues that nobody is asking, and that's why for me, the next president of Nigeria should not just be anybody. All of us will need to open our eyes and not just. I really am not bothered about the age of anybody, but what are the age of his ideas? Like I've explained to you, these are everyday things that people understand. So what are the age of his ideas, and what is his mental state? Both physical, how energetic and mobile is he? It's not enough for you to say you can elect people and delegate responsibility to them, but you should be able to also be on your toes to put them on their toes. Otherwise, they will run riot around you, and then, you know, because you will not be able to, you give a man an enormous responsibility that you know next to nothing about. At the end of the day, whatever he throws at you, you accept it. Exactly. So that's why Nigerians need to, otherwise we are almost at the cliff, and if care is not taken, we might just, you know, slip over.
Wow, great. You have already led me to my next question. The Electoral Act bill has just been passed by the House after a lot of back and forth with the executive. Now, the issue that even caused the delay, was it really necessary? Considering the fact that we've been having elections in this country, and parties usually determines the mode of their internal primaries.
You see, politicians are never free with transparent electoral process, especially in Nigeria. So anything that will enhance, you know, transparent election, they are always not comfortable with it. But just the same way they are testing the waters with what do you call it, subsidy or not subsidy. That's the same way they have been testing the waters with the amendment. If an area becomes so overwhelmingly acceptable and that they cannot run away from it, so as not to swallow that acceptability, they can introduce, you know, a stumbling block into it, and then that will now take the shine off the major issue. For example, what was the essence of including only one mode of party nominations in the Electoral Act, when ordinarily that should be a party affair? But it has nothing to do with the ordinary people. It was more of a struggle between the legislators and the governor on who controls the levers of the party machineries. So, and according to the legislators, they believe that if it is indirect, that the delegates are easily hijackable by the governors, who will keep them somewhere, bribe all of them, and then now dictate who should be voted for and who should not be voted for during party primaries. And but that if it's a direct primaries, everybody would, you know, everybody will participate. And so a senator or a House of Assembly member in his area would directly, you know, interface and relate with their people. And so they had to, you know, limit the political parties to that option, single option, that is only favorable to the lawmakers. And so that became a back and forth. But my problem in all of this was that if the president knew he was not going to assent to it, the president from day one ought to have signified his interest that he was not going to assent to it, rather than waiting for 31 days and on the heel of this National Assembly going on recess before he communicated to them that he was not going to assent to it. And be that as it may, the Attorney General's office participated fully in the all of the processes that culminated in the passage of the bill. He participated at the committee stage and all of the committee sittings that eventually culminated into a draft of the bill. So if the Attorney General, the Attorney General, I also believe, is a representative of the executive. So if there was anything that the president didn't understand from even before the passage, all of those objections would have been raised at that time. But the only objection that were raised was on electronic transmission of result, that became, you know, a huge debate until eventually the National Assembly had to harmonize their position. And immediately that position was harmonized, now came the issue of direct or indirect primaries. Now, you know, the National Assembly, you know, after raining fire and brimstone, had eaten the humble pie and amended and, you know, included both direct, indirect, and consensus. If you remember, during the president's interview, he bared his mind to say there are 3 methods of nominating candidate and not just 2. That consensus candidature is also one of such. I think that because what has happened now is that the Senate had included consensus, but the House of Reps didn't include consensus. So their position now is for them to harmonize. But I think what the Senate basically did was to read the mind of the president to say, well, he had already said that it's 3 methods, so let us include it. But the catch in all of this is for the ruling party to create an escape route for the ruling party. You know, usually a political party will hold its convention before expression of interests by candidates for a general election. So with that, it becomes less rancorous for them to want to hijack the soul of the party. The moment candidates have expressed interest to contest elective offices, all of the candidates, especially for presidency, would want to control at least the structure of the party. So now you have a lot of candidates who already have signified interest to contest for the presidency. So the convention is coming after those expression of interest. Definitely that convention would be heated up because every candidate would want to control to a large extent some stake in the party, because that will further enhance his opportunity to either get nomination or otherwise. So what the party is surreptitiously doing now through the National Assembly is to include consensus candidature. So if it is part of the law, what I'm simply going to do is to muzzle out some persons and then foist some candidate and say it is consensus. So if you now go to court and say, well, the law permits consensus candidature. So I think that is what is at play. But by and large, if we have a transparent process where the people are truly involved and the results are transmitted electronically, then it will be difficult for somebody to manipulate the process, even though the process will still be manipulated anyway, but they would have taken it a notch further from where we were. So that's why for me it's about people's participation. Whatever the political parties want to do with their convention and how they nominate candidates is really, shouldn't be our business. But if we have a platform and a process that is more transparent, if you present a candidate that is not sellable, and then the people will have the opportunity to reject such candidate. But my fear is the fact that the laws are not self-executory. It is good people with integrity and capacity that will, implement those laws. But the unfortunate part is that INEC, as we speak, even including the national commissioners that have been nominated, a lot of them were allegedly nominated by politicians and they are said to be pro-establishment people. That I can't confirm. But so, if you have pro-establishment people and people who have political biases manning the post of umpire, then the election can be as good as compromise. And that's why eternal vigilance should be the price that Nigerians would pay for freedom.
Well, thank you. Quite incisive there. On a final note, let me just take this as the bonus to this interview. The National Assembly, ditto state assemblies, have this ability of increasing the budget, having submitted by the executive to them to do their oversight function. The last one, President Muhammadu Buhari, has reservations about the inclusion of some figures into the budget. But after all, he has to just assent to it and move on. Do you think the National Assembly, do you think the legislatures have the right or the prerogative to increase budget?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's look at it legally and technically. And whatever you see them do now, they are doing it because they have been empowered by the court to so do. If you remember this issue of insertion, at the point they called it padding. this issue of insertion in the budget was a heated debate. And then the matter went to court, and the court ruled that the National Assembly are not a rubber stamp, that you can just throw a document at and then they give it back to you, that they have powers to make amendments to it. But the question is, budgets being a law also passed by the National Assembly, is it just a law, or it has to do with an appropriation that is a appropriation document that is put up and presented after feasibility studies have been carried out and projections for and against had been done? If that be the case, then it will be wrong for, even though you have the powers to amend, to remove, but to now begin to insert and increase. Where do you expect, if the executive had done their projections of how money would come and where each subhead would be, which head would be, and how the money will be utilized? Wouldn't it have been appropriate, if you feel there's any reason for inclusion, wouldn't it have been appropriate during budget preparation for you to make representations to the appropriate ministries that will present budget, to include some of those budgets in their department and agencies, because they are the ones that will execute the budget anyway? So that at the end of the day, when it comes to you, it would have been all encompassing. Do you need to wait for the budget to be presented to you before you now begin to rework it? A budget you have not done feasibility study on. At the end of the day, especially given the fact that most times you hear that the budget performed at 30% capacity because of funding. And so what's the essence of adding or including projects in the budget that will not be executed at the end of the day? So these are the issues that we need to answer, with our democratic experiment, so that powers will not consistently be overlapping. But another thing, you can excuse the National Assembly also, because you find out that it is rub my back, I rub your back issue. So at the presentation stage, if National Assembly members brings projects to present to the ministries, in some cases the ministries can even tell them, well, this project can't come into this budget now until sometimes later, and that sometimes later undetermined. And it is some of these projects that the National Assembly members go back home to campaign with, because here you elect a lawmaker to go make law. We are not looking at the numbers of laws that they have made. We are looking at the numbers of projects they have attracted to their constituencies, to their senatorial district. So that is how we even judge or measure their performance. So you find out that this mad rush, this horse race to insert for the benefit of the individual lawmakers, or whoever is in a position of authority. Because largely Nigerians, the institutions are not self-activated. You must know somebody who knows somebody for something to be done in your area. You don't need to, there are no projections. That's why sometimes when I listen to people tell me, oh, Lagos master plan, a blueprint somewhere that somebody somewhere, some years, came up with, and then everybody has been following that blueprint. And I said, show me the master plan. So a year from now, where will new roads be constructed in Lagos? So if we all know that there is a master plan, there's a development plan like you have in other societies, then you can say for sure that this road from the developmental plan of this state, the local government, or the country, in 2 years from now, a road will run through this place because it is already earmarked in the layout plan. But here, we don't even have such. Somebody can just wake up one day and say, oh, Ambode is from Ekpe, he needs to construct road in Ekpe, and then he moves to Ekpe. Oh, Fashola lived in Sulere. Oh, so now he's building roads in Sulere. So everybody now will want the governor that will come from their end, so that he would attract development to their area. you want a lawmaker that will come from your area so that he will attract development from your area. So that's why you have this, overlap consistently. And our courts also are not helping matters. And then, like we say here, justice gradually becoming for the highest bidder. So depending on the side where the side that the side of justice that the finances is weighing heavily in favor of. So that's where justice will fall.
Thank you very much. Really nice talking to you.